Hello friends, and welcome to Your New Normal, conversations about living with gastric cancer. I'm Hans Rueffert, and I've been finding and refining my own new normal since being diagnosed with gastric cancer back in 2005. A cancer diagnosis like that changes so many things, not just how you live, but also how you feel in your own skin. Your body might not look or even move the way that it once did, and that can leave you feeling uncertain, frustrated, or even invisible. But today, we want to create a safe space where you can breathe, a space where you can reconnect with your body, not as something broken or less than, but as a source of strength, wisdom, and beauty. In this episode, we'll talk about what it means to feel strong in a body that's been through so much. We'll explore how to cultivate a positive body image even in the face of scars, weight loss, or other visible changes. We'll also hear from experts about how to adapt to changes in physical ability and how to reframe expectations and goals in a way that honors where you are today, not just where you used to be. You'll meet a photographer who uses underwater portrait sessions to help people connect with their bodies in ways that are freeing and transformative. This is about more than appearances. This is about identity, self-worth, and learning to love the new version of you, no matter how many times that may change. If you've ever looked into the mirror and struggled with what you see, or if you've ever wished that your body could just do what it used to do, please know that you are not alone. This conversation is for you. So, Mike, you and I have played together, and we played against each other on the pickleball courts. And usually I like it when you're on my side of the net better.
You're kind.
Well, yeah, we do play well together. So that's kind of our most recent history. But I knew you not as a patient, but I've known of you as a physical therapist. Your reputation in this area has been well. So talk about what you did professionally.
Well, I am a physical therapist. I'm retired, but I maintain a license. I originally was in Atlanta working at Emory, and I knew that I wanted to go into private practice at some point, so I did. But I found out that there was a lot of need up in the mountains. And so I started coming up this way and piecing some things together, and was able to then, over time, put together a pretty successful private practice.
I imagine you've seen every type of injury or illness or patient out there, but did you have a specialty or pretty much?
Well, being in private practice, of course, you're wanting anybody to come through the door. And so it was a general practice, but for the most part, my interests were orthopedic rehab in nature and pain management in nature. And so I developed a lot of manual skills to help me treat in that particular way.
Okay.
And it's funny, there's a link really between playing pickleball and being interested in pickleball and trying to understand pickleball and physical therapy for that matter, because one of the big things that I needed to do in physical therapy was not only treat, but to teach.
So and I'm just thinking from, of course, my own experience is always going to sort of color, the questions that I ask, but when a patient comes to you that's had something traumatic happen, right? Mm-hmm. So you have a patient who used to be, fairly active, had maybe sports weren't their entire identity, but their physical ability was a part of who they were. When all of a sudden that part of the puzzle is tragically often or unexpectedly very often removed from them, how do you get them towards accepting that and towards that new path?
Well, as you know, and as you're actually intimating, is that motivation is a big factor. Now, what helped me in physical therapy was that, quite frankly, it's very basic. It's a very basic science and a very basic profession in that, what do I do? Well, when someone comes to me, naturally I take a history, and there's a lot that can go into that history taking. And a lot of that history taking involves, what were you like? What were you doing before this happened? And that type of thing. And that kind of helps you then kind of gear where you might want to try to go if you can.
Right.
You know, but I need to take measurements, and those measurements are range of motion. Those measurements include strength, endurance, balance, that type of thing. So it gives us a structure to work on. Okay, these are the limitations, and let's work on these limitations. And then as these limitations then begin to become less, and you get back to maybe not what you were, but
right.
closer to what you were, then we can start putting in the motivational aspects along with it. Not that you wait that long, but it's an ongoing thing that you do, motivation as well as the treatment of these limitations.
Well, limitations is the kind of the thing that I feel like, myself included, that's all we focus on, right? When we're in that situation where, you know, again, major surgeries, you know, pain issues, we become so hyper fixated on those limitations, oftentimes it's hard to see beyond that.
It is. And I think that as a person starts eliminating those limitations, then they're then able to focus their attention beyond those as to, all right, how do I now incorporate this new normal or this changing normal of me into what I want to do.
I think that comparison between who I was, who I am now, sometimes almost blinds us from who I will or who I can be. And I know that as all of us, as we get older, it's so easier to think, well, I can't play like I could when I was 18 or when I was 25. And so all of us already experience that sort of gradual loss of ability over time. But I think someone who goes through surgical or, you know, in your case, I'm sure you've seen accident victims where now a switch has been flipped and the life trauma has happened, and that change happens so suddenly that there isn't time really to sort of grieve that, you know, the loss of that older person.
I think that it's important, and I've found this since retirement and that type of thing, is reinventing yourself.
Yeah.
I think that reinventing yourself is very important, and you might think, well, I don't want to reinvent myself. I was happy the way that I was. Well, okay, you can still be happy the way that you are or were, but you can change things, and it can be all kinds of things. It can be what you think about politics. It can be things about what you feel about what's important spiritually to you or emotionally and physically. You know,
Sure.
I know that I'm 73, and I used to could run like the wind.
Yeah.
And ran track and collegiate track and that type of thing. And now when I play these young people and I see how fast they are on the court, it makes me smile because I knew I was that fast
Sure.
at one time. And I know I'm not going to be fast again like that, but I can do other things.
I think of it, I mean, there's so many ways to process this, and I've always kind of used this sort of the book analogy, right? There was a chapter in which I was really good at this thing, right? And so the fact that I'm not in that same chapter shouldn't make me sad.
Right.
I should be happy that I was even in that chapter at some point.
That's right.
Story,
You
right?
experienced that chapter.
That's right. I mean, I can look back.
And there are a lot of chapters to life.
Oh, sure. Yeah, but this is as we enter a new chapter physically, mentally, after the trauma, which I think there's no other word for it. After technically I'm not an amputee because I haven't lost a limb, but I've lost several
Sure.
organs on the inside, and it has limited my physical ability. But it took a while for me to, and I guess it's still a daily struggle. Like what can I do versus what I used to be able to do. But I feel like that the days where I least feel like going and taking a walk are the days that I need to take a walk the most.
Right.
So how do you find that? We talked about motivation. When you have a patient that you have a hard time motivating, those awakening moments. Have you had patients that were tough, that finally were able to come over that?
Well,
hill?
yeah, of course. There are always those patients, and I guess what I feel about that is that if someone chooses to be that way, and they're not motivated, and they don't have a lot of expectations or goals and that type of thing, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
I just, you can't force someone to be that way, you know. And so I'd like to see the spark happen, and sometimes the spark occurs later.
Yeah.
You know, you never know what's going to spark the spark.
Well, I feel like that too often the goals are set too high, and you don't climb Everest in a straight line, right? It's you climb, you pause, you rest, you go this way, you pause, you rest. And I feel like having that conversation early on, that here's our goal, but it's not a straight line, or it's not always a straight line. Right. There are oftentimes dips.
Sure, yeah. I mean, you can go down before you go up.
For sure.
Sure can.
Talking about motivation and expectations with Mike made me think back to my conversation with Carol Zepf about self-esteem and motivation, and rebuilding the confidence needed to not just push through, but to thrive. So, at the essence of the idea of your new normal, physicality is a big part of that. And I think for a lot of people, their strength is inherently intertwined with their idea of their self-esteem. But before I even go down that road, let's talk about self-esteem. Like, what does that really mean, and how do we wrap our minds about this idea of self-worth?
Well, I have a working definition of self-esteem that we talk about in my office, and that's how I see myself through the eyes of others. That's a big part of self-esteem. So, if I have to be discriminatory about who is in my field of vision.
Sure, who those others are.
Who those others are. Positive people, positive changes. Negative people, negative changes. So this is something to stand firm on that, and that will help you, and in turn I think it will help them. This is not the time to rescue, convince, or cajole someone. This is not an evangelical event. This is the essence of your well-being, and I would encourage, be around positive people. Positive people mean positive changes. If there's someone in your family and you say, oh, I can't do that, then make sure you accessorize and overarch those who really will speak into your life and speak well.
Well, I love the idea of how others perceive, but when you are by yourself, though, like in those moments with your own reflection, coming to grips with how you imagine the person who you were, it could even be months ago, with this new version of you. It's a bit of a shock sometimes, right? Whether it's you losing your hair, or you're losing your muscle mass, or that self conversation with your reflection. How does that work?
I have a book in my office, and the title of the book is Mama, Do You Love Me? And it's a children's book. And there's a part in the book where the child is asking the mother, what if I did this? What if I looked this way? Would you still love me? And there's a line in that book that always brings tears to my eyes. She says, inside of what I see, I know you're there, and you would be you, and I do love you. So whatever is on the exterior, remember who you are on the inside. And that's the place where love lives.
No, that's beautiful. I know from my own experience, and also in talking with others, it's a process, right? It's not something, and you can do affirmations and that helps, but at some point, accepting that person looking back at you as you is a little bit of a paradigm. Like there's the point where you have to go, okay, this is the hand that I'm dealt. Now I'm going to play the hand that I'm dealt, and but it can also be a little bit inspiring in a way. Like you can see how quickly the body can change.
Yes.
And you can also be that agent of change in sometimes the other direction. There's limitations to that. But I know for me, physical exercise has helped me mentally, perhaps as much, if not more, than it has helped me physically. Just that have those endorphins, to have that sense that I'm making a positive impact on that whole body level.
Because inside of the shell of who we are, you love athletics and you like to be active, and that part of you gets to be prominent. But it is a process. It is a process, and it is a decision.
Well, and it's also, I think, I identified as a tennis player, and then when I wasn't able to do that anymore, I then felt less than. I felt like a has-been, like it was so far in my rearview mirror that I really mourned that person. I mourned that chapter in my life. I had to find something to replace that, right? And that took me the better part of a decade to find that, because I was sort of wrestling with that mourning, that version of me. But I think the same could be true of aging. The same could be true of maybe, moving to a different place and having a different social circle of friends, that anytime there's that sort of abrupt change, be it cancer or otherwise, it's that defining that new normal is a challenge.
It is a challenge, and that's a common experience. Being a widow, you're not a couple anymore.
Yeah.
It is a profound process.
That's a great example, because you can think of, and I can think of a handful, who, not that you would say one is better than the other, but they have been able to find joy in this next chapter. And maybe that's a personal analogy, but I think of life in chapters, just because what happened in chapter 1 and chapter 2 was wonderful, but it's not going to happen again in chapter 5 and 6 and 7, rather than mourning that it's not going to happen again, celebrate the fact that it even happened at all, right?
Life is dynamic, and there are many chapters. Life is long with many chapters. Look at them and get support, and it's a one day at a time. But yes, I'm sorry it took a decade to find your passion in the body that you have now.
Well, it took pickleball that long to make its way to Georgia.
Make its way. Someone else might say, well, I'm glad it only took a decade.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's funny how we seem to have these constant themes in our lives. For me, these conversations about growth and rebuilding follow similar patterns, of course with a little pickleball thrown in for good measure. Before we wrap up our conversation with Mike, I want you to hear from another friend of mine who's doing remarkable things with her talent and passion for photography. Erena Shimoda is giving back to survivors in a unique and touching way that not only gives her the perfect platform to showcase her artistic talents, but also gives back to the people who can benefit from this experience the most. Through her pioneering of the Underwater Transformation Project, Erena has created a safe space where her photography gives a beautiful escape and a new rediscovery. For Shimoda, seeing cancer survivors marvel at photographs of themselves made such an impact on her that she decided to combine her interest in underwater photography with patient recovery, namely to help them experience the transformative effects of being submerged in water and feel beautiful about themselves when they see the resulting portraits. Hello friends, I am visiting today with my friend Erena Shimoda from the Underwater Transformation Project, and I was lucky enough to actually be in front of the camera underwater, which I have to say was, well, you and I started talking about that over 10 years ago, about the idea of me being a part of that, and wasn't able to do it. So 10 years later, I'm glad that we were finally, and I have to tell you, it's exhausting. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, this is more than photo shoot. It's more like the physical and emotional. You have to be ready for that, and you don't know until you get in the water.
I think I'm still a little tired, and maybe a little water in my ears. How did you come up with taking that photography angle and connecting with this idea of the physical transformation?
So I started volunteering for American Cancer Society. They had this program called Look Good, Feel Better. It is for the cancer patients and survivors to learn how to put wigs on, how to take care of your skin, put makeup on and wigs. Before and after that program, I could tell their facial expressions different. You know, before the session, when they come into the class, they come in like really down and sick. But after the session, they gain their confidence. They rediscover their beauty by doing something new, like giving them confidence. So when I saw that, I thought, you know, I want to have my underwater portrait session to have the same effect.
Right.
And I wanted to create the space for them to be free and be happy again.
I think it's that body positive message is so important. I have 3 children, and I think for even just a regular healthy person, having somebody embrace the body that they have, but especially when you've gone through physical trauma, it's a tough thing. It's a long road to becoming comfortable with your new normal, because you have the memory of the way that you have always looked, and then when you have such a dramatic change, I love the fact that you're doing this, and honestly, your personality too. You are so good at extracting that, making the person feel comfortable. And I would never have known that until I got in the pool. But it really was a phenomenal experience that I'd highly recommend for anybody to do. And I know a friend of mine did where he brought his daughter in the pool too. And what a cool idea to be able to share that with the next generation.
Right.
Make it a family thing.
First I was afraid because she was such a young girl, but actually she was like fish too. They could just like swim together, so it was really cute. It came out really well.
I think that's a cool idea.
And for people who is having issues with their new body and how they overcome that during this portrait session is when you go underwater, all the sounds are blocked. It's so quiet, and you don't see down underwater clearly. It's more like blurry, so they don't feel that everybody's watching them. And they feel they can focus on themselves, and they feel like they can just be who they really are. So I think being in the water is like the space for them to be free.
There was a freedom to it, and also the fact that it wasn't incredibly bright and it wasn't incredibly dark. It was like the lighting was this perfect sort of womb-like, warm space, perfect lighting. Through her lens, quite literally, Erena has created a healing space where cancer survivors can reconnect with their bodies in a way that feels safe, empowering, and free. Her underwater photo sessions aren't just about capturing an image. They're about reclaiming one's identity, finding peace in physical changes, and rediscovering the beauty that lives beyond the scars and the surgeries. As Erena shared, the weightlessness of the water and the quiet, blurry surroundings allow people to just let go of their self-consciousness and truly be themselves again. And that message of seeing your body in a new, more compassionate light leads us perfectly into our next conversation with Mike. As gastric cancer survivors adjust to their life after surgery, let's talk about some clinical insight around physical therapy, especially the deep empathy needed around the conversation of managing physical changes, rebuilding strength, and supporting body confidence, and how healing goes far beyond the physical. It seems like such an impossible journey when you're waking up and you don't know which way's up, and they've got tubes coming out of places you didn't know tubes could go. The whole thing just seems impossible. And then when you are on top of the mountain looking back down, it's hard to remember that pain. I mean, thankfully, it's hard to remember that pain and that uncertainty. I think bringing on board a mental Sherpa, to help you get up the mountain, but also having a physical therapist to help you navigate the physicality of those challenges ahead isn't talked about enough. So is this something that as a patient you can advocate for yourself, or is this something that usually needs to come from the top down?
Well, if you're not experienced in the healthcare realm, If you're like most people, then you're not going to the gym. You may have played sports when you were younger. You may not have, but as you age, you certainly aren't. And unless your healthcare provider is not leading you along, you may not know what to do.
Right.
This is where family and friends can come in handy, but the healthcare providers in those early stages need to be aware that there's going to need to be something next, and that they need to be kind of channeling you towards those things.
Well, and you know, at the first part of our conversation, we talked about limitations, and because I'm a chef, this is the way that I think. I can't help but do food analogies. But when somebody has a new dietary limitation, they're diabetic or they, you know, whatever it is, everybody focuses on what I cannot eat. And so it becomes overwhelming. It's a negative, negative blinders, because then they start thinking about the ice cream and the carbs and the sugars and what have you, the candy bars. So if you then can just change that and start talking about the foods that you can eat. You know what I mean? Yes, there's a subset of foods, but don't make that a big deal. Now start talking about, but these are all the things that you can eat and how delicious they can be. I wonder if there's a strong, paradigm there with the physical therapy. Like, yes, you might not be a champion tennis player anymore, but look at all these other things you can do. So maybe it's showing them a different menu. And I think goals have to be digestible. They need to be not, of course, having the end game in mind, but you have to have these daily accomplishable, manageable goals that you can feel that rush of accomplishment when you're able to check them off. And I feel too often, especially when you're trying to find your equilibrium, we're setting that goal that one day I want to run a marathon. Well, that's fantastic, but it's not going to happen next week. So there are 1,000 micro goals before you get to even a midway point, and then from there you reassess. And I think that is so important, that there is no rush, right? We're all moving on the same time scale, so it feels faster than others sometimes. But there's no rush for us to live our best life. That can be a goal that is a perennial goal, and it doesn't have to happen tomorrow. But every tomorrow can be slightly better to help get you to a sustainable, happy, healthy, strong, new life.
Well, just remember, any high of how you feel and everything is defined by what your low was. And so there can be peaks and valleys, but those valleys are important because we then know what the peak feels like and how important that is and how good it makes you feel.
Today, we started by talking about what it means to feel strong in your new body, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. Strength doesn't always look the way that we expect it to. Sometimes it's simply getting out of bed in the morning, taking a walk, or looking into the mirror with compassion. Handling changes of self-esteem can be one of the most personal, most difficult parts of the entire journey. But we've heard today that reconnecting with your sense of self, finding ways to feel proud, grounded, and whole is not only possible, it's powerful. And for many, the path forward includes reconnecting with your new body through movement, through art, through presence and care. We've seen how even the act of being photographed underwater can offer a sense of liberation, a moment to feel unburdened and truly be yourself. We also touched on managing changes in physical appearance, a topic that's often left unspoken. But today, we said the quiet part out loud. Your scars, your size, and all of those changes, they're not imperfections. They're reminders of your incredible survival story. We also explored how to reframe your expectations and set goals that reflect your current reality. Not the old version of you, but the resilient, ever-evolving person that you are now. Healing isn't about going backwards. It's about moving forward with purpose and with grace. You're not just a body that's been through something. You're a person who is becoming. And that version of you, the one you're currently discovering, is worthy of love, pride, and joy. So thank you so much for spending time with us today. Whether you're newly diagnosed or years into your survivorship, please know this: you are not alone. There's strength in your story. There is beauty in your becoming. To learn more or to connect with others who understand, visit gastriccancer.org or you can email us at info@gastriccancer.org. Until next time, take care of yourself, be well, and Gesundheit.